pleasure.
So the very known Robert Dilts, who is an author, more than 30 books, I can say. Almost 28.
Yeah, something like that.
So author, developer, trainer, coach, consultant,
yeah.
and much more, and not much more. So I would like to speak about NLP, and perhaps at the very beginning in the 70s at NLPU in Santa Cruz, California,
yes.
when you were with John Grinder and Richard Bandler, and if you could speak about the difference that makes the difference, speaking about NLP in the 70s, the 1970s, and now in 2020, what would it be?
Well, I think, obviously a lot has changed in those 40-something years. And in those days, you have to remember in the 70s, the mid to late 70s, cognitive psychology was just starting. There wasn't even really a field of cognitive psychology at that time. And there was no such thing as coaching in those days. You were either a psychotherapist or a psychologist, and if you said you were a coach, they would say, which sports team are you coaching? So a whole area of this, really kind of at the beginning of this whole area of personal development. And so I think what would be the difference is NLP really did start as primarily a cognitive approach, meaning you're looking at language, you're looking at mental process, specifically in the brain. That part of the NLP was mostly the neuro was in the brain, and a lot of brain research was just starting. I mean, neuroscience as it is today barely existed at that time. There was neurosurgery or neurology, but actually the understanding of neuroscience and its relationship to behavior was really just beginning. So, and of course, the focus of NLP at that time was primarily on psychotherapy. So, like Virginia Satir, like Milton Erickson or Fritz Perls. So it was primarily oriented, with personal development primarily oriented to the individual, and for more of a kind of a therapeutically oriented change process. Now today, of course, NLP has spread to many, many other areas, far beyond therapy, and of course through coaching, NLP has come into sort of a mainstream. And then I would say the focus too of what NLP looks at has moved from simply language and then the brain to the whole nervous system. We say that we're now moving into like a fourth generation, which makes sense after 40-something years, so that it started to include more of the body and what we would call somatic intelligence, and more of this notion of a collective intelligence, a relational intelligence. So, these are some of the qualities of what we would call the third and the fourth generations of NLP. And of course, NLP is applied in education, it's applied in business, it's applied in
lots of areas.
Many areas. So I'd say its core is still the same, the sense of curiosity, the sense of empowering people to have better charge of their own lives and to grow is still the same, but the number of ways that NLP now has to do it is much bigger. It would be like whatever the iPhone 1 versus the iPhone 10. You have a lot more.
Good metaphor.
You have a lot more both mechanical features and a lot more apps.
Okay, and so I am very delighted and honored because I am now an NLP affiliate partner project with you and NLPU in Santa Cruz, California. And so what would you say to people who are going to attend the trainings about what NLP brought you personally and professionally, and perhaps more generally, what can NLP, generative NLP, because I will do
the
a
generative
NLP school. I'm the first in France.
That's right.
So what can it bring to people more generally, and to you first?
Well, I like to say I pretty much use NLP for everything except maybe breathing, and then I'm not so sure about that. So, you can use NLP. It's hard to find anything that doesn't relate to your nervous system, to your language, to your programming. Everything that we do is essentially coming from our nervous system, our way of thinking, our mindset, etc. And I think what NLP gives you is one of the first things that, of course, it naturally develops is a greater sense of self-awareness, and through that sense of self-awareness comes a self-empowerment. NLP, of course, is well known because it provides many tools. So it's not just a philosophy, it's not just a theory. It's giving you very practical things that you can use. You were mentioning these 20-something plus books. All of those I've written using, NLP processes, fundamental things like just dreamer, realist critic, having ways to basically increase your own sense of resilience, your own sense of energy. Basically, NLP can improve pretty much every aspect of your life. We're exploring here in this moment health. Yeah. You can use NLP in your relationships. You can use NLP in your, like I say, to write a book or to communicate better with other people. There's NLP's presentation skills, trainer skills. So basically, it's the some people say it's the science of success. I say it's the science of self-improvement. It's the science of how we keep taking ourselves to another level. So, NLP gives you the tools to essentially have a better and more productive life.
Yeah. And speaking about another level, if we speak about IAGC, as a French representative for IAGC.
Not only a representative of NLPU, but of IAGC.
IAGC too.
Yeah.
And what would be for you the connection between the generative change work, NLP, and SFM 1, 2, 3, so next generation entrepreneurs, generative collaboration, and conscious leadership and resilience?
Yeah. Well, I think they all come from, I think, the same sort of generative mindset, let's say. Because Stephen Gilligan and I, who were co-founders of the IAGC, were both there with Bandler and Grinder in those early days, and not only Bandler and Grinder, but with Milton Erickson, with people like Gregory Bateson, with I think some of the people that were really the pioneers in this whole area of personal and systemic development. So I think there was already this effort. There was a deep sense of curiosity that unites them. There's a deep sense of desire to bring more to people's lives that unites all of those things. Now, then the differences are that it's in the form of the approach. So, NLP we were already speaking of. It's specifically looking at you as an individual. What can you do in terms of your own, inner programming to improve what you're doing? Generative change itself includes NLP. That's a part of it, but and also emphasizes. As much some of the work of Milton Erickson coming through Steve Gilligan, but also it has to do with Stephen's own developments in areas like self-relations and generative self, and my others, in other places like you mentioned, the success factor modeling, which is not only looking at individuals, but it's looking at successful teams, organizations, and even ultimately ecosystems. Yeah. So they're slightly different orientations. Now the whole idea, of course, of generative change is it's about creating something that is brand new, that's not existed before. And so while NLP can be used for many things, when we begin to focus it on on this notion of generativity, certain parts of it become more relevant and certain aspects become more important. Similarly with generative trance work or work that Stephen is bringing. And so the idea of generative change, also from Stephen and I, is that we want to basically also empower a group of others, such as yourself, to also bring more developments in your own somatic work and other things that you're doing, so that I think all of these things. Remember, Richard Bandler, one of the co-founders of NLP, used to say that NLP is really it's an attitude supported by a methodology. So
that's true.
And so we start with this attitude, and then I think there's some similar methodologies, but then different methodologies related to SFM versus NLP. So probably what unites them all is this common attitude. And then what differentiates them is the particular methodologies and emphasis of those methodologies that we're bringing.
Great. And so I have a last question.
Yeah.
Question from the heart.
From the heart.
Are you going to come to my NLP school to do some trainings with me?
Everything is possible.
Oh.
Of course, I'd be very happy to, and it's always the challenge of when. But of course, I would be happy. It's only a question of planning. It is not a question of desire. And since you are obviously an NLP University affiliate, would be more than happy to support you and your school and everything that you do.
Thank you very much, Robert. Thank you.
With pleasure.